Okay, good morning, everybody. We're back on the osteoarthritis book that I previewed last night, but we're going to go through it. The role of mitochondria in osteoarthritis. And this is chapter 7, Oxidative Stress and Osteoarthritis, a book by Peter Bales from 2008. Mitochondria are very important chemical factories involved in the energy production of cells. In the process of generating the energy that fuels all the chemical reactions of the cell, the mitochondria generate inflammatory and other highly reactive compounds that lead to increased inflammation and cell damage. The mitochondrial factory is enclosed by a very specialized wall called a membrane, which is made up of a high concentration of fat. This membrane helps the cell in its function of energy production. The type of fat present in the walls of mitochondria determines how well they function in generating energy. If we consume a diet high in unhealthy fats, such as trans fats and saturated fats, the mitochondrial wall becomes very dense, causing it to be dysfunctional. It cannot transmit proper signals to the mitochondria, similar to the way sound waves cannot penetrate a thick wall. When we eat a healthy diet high in polyunsaturated fats and omega-3 fats, the membrane wall becomes lighter and the outside signals are better able to penetrate it. These lighter membranes are also more permeable to the uptake of important nutrients. When the mitochondrial wall becomes dysfunctional as a result of our unhealthy habits and poor nutrition, metabolic imbalance and increased oxidative stress ensue. Nutritional supplements such as acetyl L-carnitine, ALCAR, coenzyme Q10, and alpha-lipoic acid, ALA, which I will be discussing in more depth in chapter 16, help to maintain proper functioning of the mitochondria and their membrane walls. Dangerous health statistics. 20% of American adults are obese. Osteoarthritis affects 20 million Americans. 25% of American adults have metabolic syndrome. 50% of adults over age 60 have metabolic syndrome. A 673% increase in total joint replacements as a result of arthritis is expected in the next 25 years. Free radicals and mitochondrial oxidative stress. As we've already discussed, oxidative stress is detrimental to cells. This is analogous to living in a polluted city and inhaling dirty air, which is the cause of the high incidence of asthma in school-aged children. Similar to high levels of ozone and smog in the atmosphere, oxidative stress is the generation and excess accumulation of free radicals produced when mitochondria convert the food we eat into energy. These excess reactive oxygen-free radicals wreak havoc in our cells and organs, causing leakage of the cell membrane and allowing toxic substances from the environment to enter our cells. This leads to malfunctioning of the pathways inside the cells that transmit information to the nucleus. By disrupting important communications, free radicals cause unhealthy and damaging signals to be transmitted to our DNA in the nucleus. The DNA is the brain of our cells, containing the complete database that makes sure the cells function properly. We must support our detox systems to stay healthy. The body is equipped with detoxifying systems that remove free radicals and other toxins as they accumulate in the cells. These detox systems are nothing more than complex proteins coded for by individual genes in our DNA. For them to function properly, we must do our part by consuming a healthy diet containing proper amounts of vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients essential to good health. When the body is fed a diet filled with toxic trans fats, empty calories, and food additives such as dyes and preservatives, its detox system becomes overloaded and malfunctions. The result is accumulation of unhealthy sludge in our cells, which clogs the cellular machinery and depletes our energy. The detoxification system consists of 3 important enzymes found in cells, which are superoxide dismutase, glutathione peroxidase, and catalase. These enzymes convert toxic substances we eat or breathe into harmless chemicals that are then excreted through our urine or feces. When we eat unhealthy trans fats in large quantities and are exposed to a lot of environmental pollution, these enzymes have to work overtime Okay, cool. Okay, I'm going to go back. The detoxification system includes three important enzymes found in cells: superoxide dismutase, glutathione, peroxidase, and catalase. Okay. So when we eat unhealthy trans fats in large quantities and are exposed to a lot of environmental pollution, these enzymes have to work overtime to clear the body of these substances. In the process, they can become depleted and lead to accumulation of toxins, which can then cause increased oxidative stress in the body. In osteoarthritis, cartilage cells stop dividing and growing. In one experiment with diseased cartilage, researchers added vitamin C to the cells and found that their overall lifespan was increased and they became healthier. The reversal of this oxidative stress environment by vitamin C is the reason it is referred to as an antioxidant vitamin. That is, it prevents the cellular aging and rusting that is the root of cell degeneration. So figure 7.2, vitamins and supplements that support mitochondria. Vitamins and supplements that are important in preventing the buildup of sludge in our cells and decreasing mitochondrial free radical production include N-acetylcysteine, NAC, 1 to 2 grams per day, B-complex vitamins, I'll read them out: thiamine B1, riboflavin B2, niacin, vitamin B6, folic acid, vitamin B12, and, oh, cool, he's listing 50 to 100 milligrams per day of thiamine, 50 to 100 of riboflavin, 20 milligrams of niacin, 50 to 100 of vitamin B6, 400 micrograms of folic acid, and vitamin B12, 25 micrograms per day. Acetyl L-carnitine, 500 to 4,000 milligrams per day. Alpha-lipoic acid, 600 milligrams. Coenzyme Q10, 100 to 600 milligrams per day. Vitamin C, 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams per day. Glutathione, 300 to 600 milligrams per day. These are important nutrients that support the detoxifying enzyme systems in our cells and are important supplements in the maintenance of optimum joint health and fighting of osteoporosis. Another important experiment showed that oxidative stress damages the cell membrane, which protects the cell and functions to communicate with other cells. This damage to the cell membrane in cartilage cells produced by oxidizing rusting agents leads to the development of osteoarthritic cartilage breakdown. Okay, obesity and oxidative stress. Current research is showing that besides often having high blood pressure, chronically elevated blood sugar levels, and increased fat content, obese people also have a state of elevated inflammation and increased oxidative stress in their bodies. An optimum level of inflammation is important for proper functioning of the body, as discussed in Chapter 4. It is when inflammation occurs chronically and at increased levels that it causes disease. Inflammation is carried out primarily by our white blood cells, which fight foreign invaders, and also by a complex series of chemical reactions that are critical to the normal healing process of the body. The most important causes of chronically increased and dangerous inflammation in the body are overeating and eating the wrong types of foods. The resulting increase in inflammation works together with the oxidative stress discussed in Chapter 3 to lead to the formation of dangerous free radicals and nitric oxide in our joints. Causes of increased body inflammation: high glycemic load, sugar and complex carbohydrate diet, stress, emotional and physical, infection, environmental toxins, sedentary lifestyle, high trans fat diet, metabolic syndrome, obesity, mitochondrial dysfunction, elevated blood levels of homocysteine, insulin resistance. Okay, on to 76 page. The most dangerous type of fat that is that found around the waist. This fat is more inflammatory than fat found around the thighs and thus more dangerous to our health. This is because when fat around the belly is excessive, its fat cells produce chemical messengers such as IL-1, IL-6, and leptin, which turn on genes in the body that increase cell damage. Thigh fat, on the other hand, does not exhibit these effects. When obesity around the waist occurs in combination with elevated blood pressure, elevated cholesterol, and elevated blood sugar, then a dangerous condition called metabolic syndrome is created. Conclusions. When we have an unhealthy diet, our cellular machinery malfunctions. Food is converted to energy very inefficiently, and toxic substances accumulate in the body, leading to increased rusting and acidity. This creates a toxic microenvironment in our joints that leads to the development of osteoarthritis and many other degenerative diseases, such as Alzheimer's and heart disease. Proper nutrition, including a number of nutritional supplements I will be detailing in Chapter 16, helps cells and their mitochondria to function properly and prevent the development of disease. The improper functioning of mitochondria is a result of increased cellular sludge, increased free radicals, and increased cellular activity as a result of, the improper functioning of mitochondria as a result of increased cellular sludge, increased free radicals, and increased cellular acidity leads to degeneration and breakdown seen in osteoarthritic joints. The best way to prevent this is to consume a diet high in fruits, vegetables, healthy proteins, healthy omega-3 fats, and vitamins and minerals. So great. The toxic microenvironment in our joints that leads to the development of osteoarthritis and many other degenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's and heart disease. Unhealthy diet. Wow. Okay. How chronically elevated blood sugar damages joint cartilage. Elevated blood sugar. Insulin resistance develops. Liver and muscle cells cannot clear sugar by removing it from bloodstream. Proteins in the blood become glycated or sugar-coated, forming AGEs. And that, I have to go all the way to the back. I don't know. Maybe they put it in the glossary. Let's try it. There's a good glossary. Please, come on. It's like when advanced glycation end products. I was thinking, is it glycated? It's glycation, or advanced glycation end products. Sugar-coated proteins formed by excess blood sugar that triggers inflammation, oxidative stress, and cartilage breakdown. Here's the nice little figure there. So, chronically elevated blood sugar damages joint cartilage. That's page 77. All right, next figure. The making of an osteoarthritic cartilage cell. Damaging stimuli. Sugar-coated proteins. Hormonal imbalance. Free radicals. Inflammatory cytokines. Broken cartilage fragments. Environmental toxins. Bind to cartilage cell surface receptors, signal DNA in cell nucleus, activates genes that produce cartilage degrading chemicals. Cartilage destruction occurs. So, there you go. It's kind of a cool little graph there. What do you think? Is my coffee cooled down a bit? I love this. Okay, inflammation and osteoarthritis, a 5-alarm fire in our joints. Our genes interact with the environment to cause disease. When inflammation in the body increases due to obesity, chronically elevated blood sugar levels, and poor diet, genes are turned on in our cartilage cells that produce inflammatory compounds such as interleukin 1. And I'm going to spell that for you because it's a hard spelling. INTER, and then it's LEUKIN, leukin. Maybe somebody says leukin, interleukin 1. These compounds are produced by the highly inflamed fat cells found in fat around the waist. Research has shown that IL-1 is an important inflammatory compound involved in the processes that damage joints. Genetic research has isolated NALP3, the gene that codes for IL-1. It has been found that different individuals have variations in the sequence that forms the gene code. As we have discussed previously, these changes are called single nucleotide polymorphisms. The word nucleotide refers to the alphabet soup compounds that make up a gene. All genes are made up of 4 different nucleotides that are combined in long sequences and are coded using the letters A, T, G, and C. Okay, I feel like Oh, I see. Okay, that was hard. I'm going to read that again. Genetic research has isolated NALP3, the gene that codes for IL-1. It has been found that different individuals have variations in the sequence that forms the gene code. As we have discussed previously, these changes are called single nucleotide polymorphisms. The word nucleotide refers to the alphabet soup compounds that make up a gene. All genes are made up of 4 different nucleotides that are combined in long sequences and are coded using the letters A, T, G, and C. I still find that hard. My coffee's kind of cold. No, silly. Okay. The substitution in one of the letters in a long sequence, for example, A, G, C, T, C, G, A, G, T, C, G, with another letter is all that is needed to cause an SNP and change the function of the gene. Okay, now we're going to go back to the glossary because I bet he's got SNP. Oh, yeah, is a single nucleotide polymorphism. Which for him, he's just like, oh yeah, SNP. To me, that looks like Scottish National Party, but okay. Single nucleotide polymorphism, small changes in the sequences of a gene that lead to that gene to code for a protein with altered function. It is SNPs in key genes that predispose people to develop certain diseases. Okay, yeah, it's basically a genetic defect. That's what an SNP is, so there we go. Such an SNP change in the NALP3 gene creates a higher inflammatory response in that individual's body when exposed to inflammatory foods and other environmental toxins. SNPs in key genes determine how individual people respond to foods and environmental toxins. These SNPs help to shape our genetic individuality and determine our predisposition to develop certain diseases. Research has shown that unhealthy foods interact with the IL-1 family of genes and lead to increased inflammation, especially in these susceptible individuals. This different gene functioning between individuals is the core of why some people require larger amounts of vitamins and minerals in order to detoxify their bodies and stay healthy. Interleukins, TNF, and inflammation. IL-1 causes inflammation in osteoarthritis. Page 80. Inflammation is a major factor in the development of osteoarthritis. Inflammatory compounds such as IL-1 and TNF-alpha are increased in osteoarthritic cartilage compared to normal cartilage. These inflammatory compounds are also referred to as cytokines. These cytokines start the breakdown of cartilage by disrupting the normal chemical makeup of the 3-dimensional structure of cartilage. IL-1 turns on cartilage breakdown genes. When the production of IL-1 is increased, it also leads to activation of other chemicals that limit the ability of cartilage to self-repair. TNF-alpha further activates other chemicals in the cell, known as chemical intermediates, which trigger the suicide genes in cartilage cells, leading to cell death. These chemical intermediates, which transmit the inflammatory signals to the DNA located in the nucleus of the cell, are known as NFKB and MAPK. Well, that's... Okay. Well, we'll just take his word for it. Okay, the chemical intermediates transmitting the inflammatory signals. Okay. Recall that the nucleus is the storage compartment for the genes that make up our DNA. Thus, NFKB and MAPK act to turn on genes in the DNA of cartilage cells that lead to osteoarthritis. IL-1 and IGF-1 imbalance triggers cartilage damage in joints. There are important chemical compounds in the body called the growth factors, which are small proteins that act like hormones in having regulatory functions. Hormones like growth factors regulate the multiple functions of the body, and in the case of the sex hormones, estrogen and testosterone, they give the unique male and female characteristics in people. One important growth factor in the proper maintenance of joints and in promoting joint health is insulin growth factor 1, IGF-1. We have already discussed inflammatory compounds in the body called cytokines, such as IL-1. IGF-1 is also a cytokine, but it is an anti-inflammatory or good cytokine that counteracts the destructive joint effects of inflammatory cytokines. One of the reasons the incidence of osteoarthritis increases with increasing age is that IGF-1 levels in our bodies decrease as we get older. Wow. Okay. And IGF helps promote joint health. Okay. And it's decreasing. Great. Studies have shown that approximately 50% of IGF-1 is lost in our joints between early adulthood and old age. It's just not fair. Okay, decreased IGF-1 levels inhibit the proper maintenance of cartilage and are associated with the predisposition to develop osteoarthritis. Experiments with osteoarthritic animals have shown that osteoarthritis can be successfully reversed by giving them a combination of IGF-1 and pentosan polysulfate, PPS. What is this stuff? Oh, just giving them the growth factor. Oh, cool. That's experimental. The IGF growth factors are very complex, and researchers are currently trying to unravel the ways. Oh, cool. This system interacts with other factors in the body to lead to the development of osteoarthritis. Recent research has showed that when we develop metabolic syndrome and insulin resistance, IGF-1 levels are reduced. And this is detrimental to the health of our joint cartilage because IGF-1 promotes joint health. And it decreases in age. Okay. All right. IL-1 and insulin growth factor, IGF-1, have opposing functions in joint cartilage. And when inflammation is increased in the body, IL-1 is overproduced and IGF-1 production is decreased, leading to osteoarthritic damage. IGF-1 normally antagonizes the effects of IL-1. Okay. Hold on. Let's slow down. IL-1 and insulin growth factor, IGF-1, have opposing functions in joint cartilage. And when inflammation is increased in the body, IL-1 is overproduced and IGF-1 production is decreased, leading to osteoarthritic damage. IGF-1 normally antagonizes the effects of IL-1, but the low IGF-1 levels found in osteoarthritis are inadequate to safeguard against the damaging effects of IL-1. And that's where IL-1 promotes joint health, but maybe it's a not too much of it kind of thing. IL-1 and TNF-alpha are produced in increasing levels by the body when inflammation is running rampant, and they are also overproduced by cartilage cells themselves. The local increased concentration of those cytokines act to increase the production. Oh, okay. So IL-1 and TNF-alpha are produced in increasing levels by the body when inflammation is running rampant, and they are also overproduced by cartilage cells themselves. The local increased concentration of these cytokines acts to increase the production of matrix metalloproteinases, MMPs, which are cartilage breakdown enzymes. They do this by turning on the genes that code for these degrading enzymes. Inflammation and osteoarthritis pathway. Figure 8.1. Stimulates MAP signal relay transmitting station. In turn, this activates the MMP genes. This increased production of cartilage degrading MMP enzymes occurs, cartilage degradation and osteoarthritis. So here's his little Z-shaped chart. There you go. Okay. IL-1 produced as a result of increased inflammation causes the activation of MAPK, which increases the production of MMPs, which in turn start dismantling the cartilage framework. This is an important mechanism in the process of cartilage degradation in osteoarthritis. Research has shown that people with increased inflammation have increased blood levels of C-reactive protein, CRP. CRP is an inflammatory protein that is increased when inflammation rises in the body. CRP elevation exerts its negative effects in part by increasing the concentration of the RAGE receptor. As discussed earlier, RAGE is found on the surface of cartilage cells and is critical in propagating increased inflammation and in turning on cartilage genes that lead to osteoarthritic damage. PPAR receptors blunt the effects of inflammation. Peroxisome proliferator activated receptors, PPAR receptors, have the opposite effect of RAGE receptors. While RAGE, and I think it's good to think for the RAGE, it's all caps, it's an acronym, and I believe it means receptor of advanced glycation endpoints. So it's a receptor, it receives these damaged proteins, but that helps. While RAGE increases inflammation, PPAR receptors are important in blunting the effects of inflammation in the body. It is important then to help the PPAR receptors remain active and block the RAGE receptors by eating the right foods that fight inflammation. Recent studies have identified PPAR gamma receptors in human cartilage cells and have shown that PPAR gamma stimulation is able to oppose the actions of IL-1. A diet rich in anti-inflammatory omega-3 fats found in fish in the traditional Mediterranean diet stimulates PPAR receptors. Okay, and so PPAR receptors blunt the effects of inflammation in the body. So that's good. Omega-3 fats have the other benefits as well. They lead to efficient sugar and fat utilization in the body. A diet rich in these omega-3s support the function of PPAR receptors and decreases the harmful effects of IL-1. It also decreases the production of harmful cytokine TNF-alpha, leads to increased sugar uptake by cells, and decreases insulin resistance. In this way, it reduces the formation of the toxic AGEs that are so harmful to cartilage. A diet rich in healthy omega-3 fats also decreases the incidence of obesity around the waist and the incidence of metabolic syndrome. Wow. Insulin resistance increases inflammation in the body. When we consume an unhealthy diet high in sugar content, our pancreas increases insulin production. Insulin signals the body to clear the sugar from the blood by allowing the muscles and liver to remove it and store it as glycogen. Unfortunately, increased amounts of insulin eventually make muscle and liver cells deaf to the signal given by insulin. The result is the sugar accumulates in blood and insulin resistance or prediabetes develops. Chronically elevated blood sugar levels are toxic to the body because they cause the production of sugar-coated AGEs. Insulin resistance results in the chronic accumulation of increased sugar in our blood. Fat cells in our midsection that become insulin resistant start to grow in size and produce chemicals such as IL-1 and IL-6, which leads to increased inflammation in the body. Insulin resistance causes AGEs to accumulate in the bloodstream, which in turn stimulate cartilage cells to produce oxygen-free radicals, IL-6 and TNF-alpha. These cause increased inflammation in our joints. Insulin resistance is caused by defective GLUT4 transport system. Increased inflammation in the body leads to the development of insulin resistance, which in turn perpetuates and increases the inflammatory state of the body. The release of IL-1, IL-6, and TNF-alpha states of chronic inflammation leads to the IRS1 receptor to not work properly. When this receptor is not functioning normally, this disrupts the ability of cells to uptake blood sugar by decreasing the amount of GLUT4 transport protein in the cell membrane needed to do this. Insulin resistance is caused by the defective functioning of the GLUT4 transport system of sugar uptake by liver and muscle cells. Okay. Okay. In states of increased inflammation with increasing circulating levels of IL-1, IL-6, and TNF-alpha, the insulin receptor IRS1 starts to malfunction. This interferes with normal insulin signal transmission in cells, resulting in insulin resistance. The malfunctioning of the IRS1 insulin receptor decreases the amount of GLUT4 transport protein in the cell membrane. Without this transport protein, cells cannot take up and clear blood sugar. The increased blood sugar, one of the hallmarks of metabolic syndrome, is toxic to the body. Through its production of AGEs, it damages multiple organs, including the cartilage in our joints. Insulin resistance is a... Wow, okay. Insulin resistance is also caused when fat accumulates in cells as a result of obesity and excessive consumption of unhealthy fats. Blood fat increases when excessive fat is released in the circulation by the dysfunctional plump fat cells around the waist. When these fats are taken up by the liver and muscle, they interfere with the GLUT4 transport protein and result in insulin resistance. Inflammatory blood clots, atheromas in joint bone, contribute to the development of osteoarthritis.
And I do wonder
People with metabolic syndrome who have increased fat around their waists, increased blood fat with triglycerides greater than 150 milligrams per deciliter, and increased blood sugar levels are at risk for increased clotting in their vessels. This phenomenon, along with increased inflammation of vessel walls, leads to atherosclerosis. This is the hardening of the arteries by inflammatory fatty deposits that leads to the clogging of the arteries. This blocks blood flow, important nutrients, and oxygen from reaching the organs, leading to heart attacks and strokes. Bone is a living tissue that is full of blood vessels, which penetrate the substance of the bone in order to deliver nutrients and oxygen to keep bone cells alive. An interesting finding is that the same clotting that occurs in the heart vessels, the coronary arteries, also occurs in bony blood vessels. Ooh, this is making me mad. When this occurs in the bone that makes up the joint, the plaques formed by inflammatory cells and fat deposits leads to sludge buildup on the vessel walls, which decreases the blood flow. This is the same atherosclerosis that blocks arteries in the heart. This decreased blood flow negatively affects both the joint bone and its overlying cartilage cushion. Decreased blood flow in the bone causes bone to start decaying and to lose its strength as the individual bone cells start to die from the lack of oxygen and nutrients being delivered to them. The result is bone death and crumbling of bone, as well as decreased oxygenation and buildup of acidity and toxic wastes in the deep layers of cartilage that rest on this bone. Dissolved subchondral bone is a hallmark of osteoarthritic joints. This causes bone crumbling, which increases deformity when joint arthritis is severe. Bone death and dissolution occurs by two mechanisms: increased inflammation, which leads to increased sludge buildup in the blood vessels that supply oxygen and nutrients to bone to keep it healthy and alive, and the overproduction of RAGE receptors, which increases the breakdown of bone by osteoclasts. I'm going to go turn down the TV. It's too noisy.
Simple failures in the use of photography, either GPG and
Okay. Right. The hormone leptin, discussed in Chapter 2, is important in the breakdown of bone. Leptin resistance promotes bone resorption breakdown by weakening and breaking down joint bone. Joint bone. Leptin has been shown to be important in maintaining the OPG rankle system functioning well. I don't remember what that one is, but there's a footnote. Oh my gosh. I'm not looking at his footnotes. Oh, there's so many footnotes. Wow. Can I just find out what OPG is? Okay. Okay, where are we? Chapter 7? No, are we at chapter 7? Ooh. Oh, I think that's it. But, okay, anyway, let's keep going. In leptin resistance, the system overproduces bone breakdown cells called osteoclasts, which break down bone faster than it can be manufactured. The result is bone loss around the joints, which is a feature of osteoarthritis. Leptin is important in regulating both osteoclasts and the bone-forming cells called osteoblasts to maintain delicate balance that keeps our bones strong and healthy. Properly functioning leptin maintains normal bone density by inhibiting excessive bone breakdown by osteoclasts. The negative effects of leptin resistance on bone health combine with its negative effects on cartilage health to cause the deterioration of osteoarthritis. Recent MRI studies have found that in osteoarthritic joints, subchondral bone has decreased blood flow and is replaced in parts by weak scar tissue. This weakening of the foundation on which the cartilage rests accompanies and may even precede cartilage breakdown in osteoarthritis. A number of studies have shown that joint bone in people with osteoarthritis shows increased chemical activity, decreased bone density, and decreased stiffness. The decreased bone density and decreased stiffness occur later in the disease process when enough bone cells have died and new bone is not manufactured at normal rates. This decreased bone density occurs only in the bone of the affected osteoarthritic joints. Osteoarthritis is different from osteoporosis, which is a generalized bone loss affecting all of the bones in the body and develops usually in postmenopausal women as a result of decreased estrogen. Increased body inflammation negatively affects both the cartilage and the bone in osteoarthritic joints. A link exists between atherosclerosis and the development of osteoarthritis. Okay, IL-1, which is increased when inflammation is at high levels, is responsible for triggering the deposits of inflammatory cells and fat on bone blood vessel walls. These deposits decrease normal blood flow in bone, leading to areas of bone death and the collapse of bone seen in osteoporosis. Figure 8.1. Arthritic joints have diseased subchondral bone. Increased inflammation, obesity, metabolic syndrome lead to clot, sludge, and inflammatory fat deposits in blood vessels of joint bone. Oh, that's horrible. Which leads to the bony blood flow is disrupted. This leads to bone destruction and bone death seen in osteoarthritis. Oh my gosh, so wow. Go look at that. Da, da, da. Oh yeah, maybe I should check what's going on. That's just my doctor, I think. Da, da, da. Yes. Osteoarthritis is linked to high blood fat content. Page 88. Okay. Osteoarthritis is linked to high blood fat content. Osteoarthritic people have increased blood clotting and increased blood fats, LDLs, and triglycerides. The increased blood clotting and inflammation leads to sludge buildup of vessel walls. This is similar to blockage of a drain pipe by salt deposits and accumulated debris. This process is called thrombosis. Oh, and one day I woke up with what is deep vein thrombosis? Because I'd read about it and I knew it was pertinent. Thrombosis is responsible for heart attacks and bone death and accelerated cartilage deterioration in osteoarthritis. Okay. So, high-fat diet people. Okay, anybody could see that, sort of. Okay, OPG wrinkle balance is altered in osteoarthritis. The OPG wrinkle system is an important housekeeping engine in our bones. Its job is to maintain normal bone density in regulating the balance of bone building and bone breakdown. Wrinkle is a member of the TNF family of compounds involved in initiating cartilage breakdown pathways in our osteoarthritis. Wrinkle stimulates osteoclasts to break down bone. OPG, which is made by osteoblasts, acts to block the effects of wrinkle. As discussed earlier, all the body's organs are replenished with new cells as they age. This is done with enzyme systems that break down old cells and allow for new ones to take their place. Without this process, our bodies would age very quickly and we would die. Wow. Okay. The OPG wrinkle system allows for continual replenishing of our bones and keeps them strong and healthy. The dynamic balance of this system, though, is disrupted in osteoarthritis. The disruption of the OPG wrinkle system accompanies the destruction of bone that occurs as a result of decreased blood flow in the bone. Disruption of the normal bone autonomy and health can be seen on a specialized type of X-ray called a bone scan. Scientists have shown that when an arthritic patient has a positive bone scan, this is accompanied by progressive osteoarthritis and worsening of the condition. A positive bone scan shows the disruption of the normal bone because the X-ray of the bone shows a hot spot where bony destruction is occurring. A negative bone scan means that there are no hot spots of increased bone destruction. In one study, people with osteoarthritis who had positive bone scans showed progressive joint space narrowing much earlier than patients who had a negative bone scan. MRI scans of people with osteoarthritis show scarring and areas of bone death in the bone marrow, the inner portion of the long bones that make up our joints. We're reading Osteoarthritis by Peter Bales, page 89. Both are effects of decreased blood flow and a dysfunctional OPG wrinkle enzyme system. When bone starts to deteriorate, it triggers the inflammatory response as the body sends chemical messengers to the area to attempt to repair it. In this case, of course, the body is not able to repair the damage. Osteoarthritis is linked to high blood fat content. Research has shown that people with osteoarthritis have an overall elevated blood fat content. They have elevated bad fats, such as LDL and triglycerides, as well as an increased tendency to clot easily. There is an association between increased blood fat content and our osteoarthritis. There are two types of blood vessels that allow for blood flow to and from our organs. Arteries, which carry oxygen and nutrients to the organs, and veins, which carry away waste products and carbon dioxide. Clotting in arteries has been shown to be an important factor in osteoarthritis. Clotting in veins as a result of increased blood fat levels is implicated in another disease of joints called avascular necrosis, AVN. In this condition, blood clots occur in important blood vessels that supply bone, and the bone starts to deteriorate and eventually dies. This causes an accelerated form of arthritis in which, as the bone collapses, so does the overlying cartilage. This is seen especially in large weight-bearing joints such as the hip. This condition is an increasingly common cause for the need for total hip replacements in middle-aged people. Elevated bad blood fats, which are the result of a diet high in unhealthy amounts of omega-6 and trans fats, leads to increased production of unhealthy prostaglandins such as E2, which increase inflammation in the body. The COX pathway of inflammation, page 90. The arachidonic acid pathway is a very important set of chemical reactions by which inflammatory compounds such as prostaglandins, leukotrienes, and thromboxanes are generated in the body. Leukotrienes and thromboxanes, like the prostaglandin E2 discussed in Chapter 6, are unhealthy prostaglandins and are produced when we eat excessive amounts of omega-6 fats as opposed to omega-3 fats. Prostaglandins are important factors in inflammatory damage in the joints. The prostaglandins that are harmful are produced in the arachidonic acid pathway through the action of important inflammation-producing enzyme COX-2. Okay. The anti-inflammatories Vioxx and Bextra, which were recently pulled, and this is 2008, pulled off the market because of cardiac side effects, are COX-2 inhibitors. They work by decreasing inflammation and decreasing the pain of osteoarthritis by blocking the COX-2 enzyme. Once formed, PGE2 increases the activity of other inflammatory compounds discussed previously, such as TNF-alpha. The Vioxx story highlights the fact that we must concentrate on more natural ways of blocking inflammation in the body, rather than on drugs that can have serious side effects. By targeting important enzymes such as COX-2 and blocking them in organs throughout the body, drugs lead to unwanted collateral damage. These concepts will be further discussed in Chapter 12. Inflammation is linked to the production of cartilage-destroying AGEs. Inflammation in the body leads to an increased amount of unhealthy blood fats spilling into the bloodstream. These circulating fats interfere with the action of insulin and of its efforts to remove sugar from the blood. Once food is broken down in the stomach and intestines, sugars from these foods are released into the bloodstream. If the liver and muscles cannot absorb the sugar, it accumulates in the blood. Systemic inflammation and increased blood fat impairs the GLUT4 receptor, which, as previously discussed, clears sugar from the blood. The resultant chronic state of increased blood sugar leads to the formation of excessive rust-forming sugar-coated AGEs, which increase oxidative stress in the body and rusting in the joint cartilage. Furthermore, as previously discussed, excess sugar in the blood increases inflammation and turns on genes that produce cartilage-degrading enzymes. Thus, inflammation and increased sugar-coated proteins work together to stimulate the production of increased MMP enzymes in cartilage, which carry out the osteoarthritic cartilage breakdown. Leukotriene B4 and other inflammatory prostaglandins. In states of increased body inflammation, compounds called leukotrienes are produced through the activation of the LOX enzyme in the arachidonic acid pathway. Leukotrienes are inflammatory prostaglandins whose production is increased because inflammation in the body increases the activity of the LOX enzyme. The LOX enzyme is activated to produce inflammatory prostaglandins when we eat a diet high in omega-6 fats and low in omega-3 fats. Sorry. Research with arthritic mice has shown that when genes that are responsible for coding for leukotriene LTB4 were blocked, the mice did not develop progressive arthritis. LTB4 acts through the transmitting relay station NFKB to generate large numbers of oxygen-free radicals. NFKB, nuclear factor Kb, is a chemical compound in cells that, when an unhealthy prostaglandin such as LTB4 stimulates the cell, transmits this harmful signal to the DNA of the cell and the nucleus. These genes, which code for cartilage breakdown proteases and free radicals, are turned on. NFKB is also responsible for attracting white blood cells into joints This increases the inflammatory response. The white cells do not attack the body in osteoarthritis, but they do increase inflammation. NFKB further increases the synthesis of IL-1 beta, an inflammatory compound in osteoarthritic joints that is responsible for producing more cartilage destruction. Anti-inflammatory drugs, the evidence of detrimental effects on joint cartilage. Anti-inflammatory drugs are widely used to control the pain of osteoarthritis. What is not widely known is that these drugs promote cartilage deterioration when used for long periods. They increase the synthesis of leukotriene LTB4 and IL-1 beta. As discussed earlier, anti-inflammatory drugs exert their positive pain-relieving action by blocking the COX enzyme in the arachidonic acid pathway. In doing so, they cause an unwanted shift of the arachidonic acid that is consumed in our unhealthy diets to be processed through the LOX pathway, a series of chemical reactions that involve the LOX enzyme discussed above and lead to the overproduction of unhealthy prostaglandins, leading to the production of inflammatory LTB4. Drugs can have a positive effect by blocking one pathway, COX, while also having negative effects by increasing the activity of another pathway, LOX. This is an example of the dual nature of drugs. While drugs can have benefits, they can also cause unwanted side effects. The benefits produced, as well as the side effects created, must be balanced for each patient and each condition in order to determine whether the drug is appropriate for the situation. One of the problems with drugs is that while the actions that benefit the body are often well understood, their potential dangerous side effects and toxicity are not known early on. This is why drugs released for general consumption are sometimes later pulled off the market. The drawback of drugs is that they block specific pathways in an indiscriminate fashion across multiple organs of the body. While they help one organ, they can potentially damage another. This is because specific chemical reactions they block have multiple and often differing functions in different organs. Furthermore, there is a delicate balance in the body of the multiple chemical pathways that constitute our metabolism. Researchers in Sweden have shown that nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, and specifically the newer COX-2 inhibitors, have detrimental effects on cartilage, bone, and tendon repair. Nonsteroidals have also been shown to block the normal protein synthesis needed to maintain muscle mass. That really bugs me. COX-2 inhibitors block prostaglandin synthesis, and because prostaglandins are essential for proper bone healing after a fracture, this has the effect of slowing the healing of fractures. So slowing the healing of, the maintaining muscle mass, slowing tendon repair, that's not good. The arachidonic acid pathway and prostaglandins. Prostaglandins, the fat compounds produced in the arachidonic acid pathway, play an important role in the development of osteoarthritis. An individual's diet determines whether a preponderance of good or harmful prostaglandins are produced. Prostaglandins act as messengers in the body and are similar to hormones in that they influence the function of cells. The good prostaglandins, such as those produced by a diet high in omega-3 fats, stimulate anti-inflammatory pathways, while the harmful ones, such as ones produced by a diet high in omega-6 fats, activate inflammatory ones. These inflammatory pathways trigger the increase of IL-6 and TNF-alpha cytokine production. These inflammatory compounds produced in inflammatory pathways, such as the LOX pathway, in turn initiate joint destruction in osteoarthritis. These inflammatory cytokines further act to trigger the development of prediabetes and help form more toxic sugar-coated proteins and oxygen-free radicals, which also conspire to destroy joint cartilage. Ooh. Okay, Inflammatory prostaglandins are formed when excess arachidonic acid accumulates in the oversized waists of obese people and those with metabolic syndrome. Diets high in anti-inflammatory omega-3 fats positively affect inflammation by blocking the formation of arachidonic acid and subsequent formation of inflammatory prostaglandins such as leukotrienes. Wow. Inflammatory cytokines are locally produced in arthritis joints. Inflammatory cytokines are produced in inflammatory fat cells, both in the waist and in osteoarthritis joints. Research has shown that fat in the joints of arthritic patients produces increased amounts of these inflammatory cytokines, which are released into the joint fluid that bathes the cartilage. There are these inflammatory compounds, including TNF-alpha, VEGF, and IL-6, cause cartilage damage. Figure 8.4, the terrible triad, metabolic cause of osteoarthritis, increased body inflammation, obesity, and insulin resistance, metabolic cause of osteoarthritis. There we go. That's a cute little diagram. Okay, the beneficial effects of diet on inflammation. A number of studies have shown the positive effects of good nutrition on the inflammation status of our bodies. Specifically, the Mediterranean diet, which is high in beneficial omega-3 fats, nuts, olive oil, and vegetables, has been studied in large population and been shown to decrease inflammation by lowering the levels of inflammatory compounds measured in the blood, such as CRP, IL-6, TNF-alpha, and homocysteine. This diet also lowers blood clotting in the body, helping to prevent strokes, heart attacks, and also the clogging of bone blood vessels in the joints. The studies have also shown a dose-related effect of the Mediterranean diet in decreasing inflammation. That is, the people most adherent to the diet had a more significant reduction in inflammation in their bodies compared to those who were less adherent. Contrary to popular beliefs, scientific studies have shown that the Mediterranean diet, which is a high-fat diet, approximately 30% fat, is better than a low-fat diet for preventing heart disease. The heart protective effects of the Mediterranean diet are related to its decrease in inflammation and its inclusion of healthy omega-3 fats and olive oil, which do not cause unhealthful prostaglandins to be produced. The conclusion of large studies is that the Mediterranean diet prevents the development of new heart attacks better than a low-fat diet. Thus, eating the Mediterranean diet produces fewer blood clotting events and lower incidences of atherosclerosis, which is also beneficial in maintaining good bone circulation in our joints and lessening the risk for osteoarthritis. Long-term studies of patients on the Mediterranean diet versus those on low-fat diets showed that people on the Mediterranean diet had greater weight loss, lower CRP levels, decreased insulin resistance, decreased cholesterol and triglycerides, and decreased production of inflammatory cytokine compounds in the blood. The Mediterranean diet is beneficial in improving metabolic syndrome, in lowering inflammation, and in decreasing the risk of blood vessel clotting. People who eat a Mediterranean diet have decreased numbers of platelets in their blood, and thus have decreased clotting propensity. This lowered clotting decreases the risk of developing atherosclerosis and the formation of sludge on vessel walls that can cause heart attacks and bone deterioration in arthritic joints. Conclusions. The development of insulin resistance leads to the formation of advanced glycation endpoints, which are the key players in the stimulation of cartilage breakdown. Inflammatory cytokines such as IL-1, TNF-alpha, and IL-6 are increased when our blood sugar levels are constantly elevated. Inflammation is increased in insulin-resistant patients and during states of increased blood sugar. Mediterranean diet, figure 8.5. Key foods that are part of the Mediterranean diet include cold water fish, rich in omega-3 fats, salmon, mackerel, sardines, nuts, walnuts, almonds, olive oil, monounsaturated fat, fruits, vegetables, red wine, it's in there, white meat, low in saturated fat, vegetable proteins, olives, beans, soy, and nuts. High sugar intake in our diet causes inflammation, which leads to disease in our bodies. Okay, got that? High sugar disease. Okay. Metabolic syndrome and obesity lead to atherosclerosis with increased inflammatory sludge deposited in blood vessels. The sluggish blood flow resulting from atherosclerosis of bone blood vessels leads to damage in bone and to the bone death seen in osteoarthritis. The crumbling of bone results in disruption of cartilage, similar to a fault line eruption from an earthquake. I love it. The cartilage becomes ruptured, and the fragmentation process is intensified. People with increased blood fat content and increased blood clotting have an increased risk of developing osteoarthritis. High blood sugar levels increase inflammation and increase the production of the compound arachidonic acid, which fuels increased inflammation in the body. Arachidonic acid is found in excess amounts and stored in the fat cells of people with obesity. Arachidonic acid leads to the formation of inflammatory prostaglandins and leukotrienes. Oh, wow. High blood sugar levels lead to an increase of AGEs in the blood, which in turn increase the production of rust-forming free radicals in the joints. And FKB is activated by the AGEs and turns on inflammatory genes in the joints. High blood sugar levels lead to increased inflammation and are directly involved in activating pathways that lead to osteoarthritic cartilage damage. A diet high in unhealthy fats leads to increased inflammation, increased incidence of metabolic syndrome, increased cardiovascular disease, and increased blood clotting. The classic Mediterranean diet can lower the incidence of the many chronic degenerative diseases plaguing us. Stop, please. Okay. During the 21st century, and is also the best diet for people suffering from osteoarthritis. Okay. Part 2. New nutritional research and osteoarthritis. I love it. Omega-3s, the good fats that quench the fire of inflammation. Omega-3s and articular cartilage. A number of studies have been performed looking at the effects of the healthful omega-3 fats and osteoarthritis. Scientists have exposed osteoarthritic cartilage cells to omega-3 fats, which are taken up by the cells and have been shown to decrease the enzymes that carry out cartilage breakdown. Osteoarthritic cartilage cells overproduce a class of enzymes known as MMPs. MMPs are normally produced by cartilage cells and are responsible for removing old cartilage as it ages and replacing it with new cartilage in our joints. This is a part of the normal housekeeping function of the body, in which our organs are constantly renewed at the cellular level. But in the case of osteoarthritis, the genes that code for MMP protease enzymes are overly stimulated, producing an excessive amount of these cartilage-degrading enzymes. Experiments have shown that cartilage destruction was decreased in the presence of these healthful omega-3 fats. This is because these fats are taken up by cells and are incorporated in the cell membrane. Cell membranes have a high content of fat in their structure. Okay, let me pay attention. See. Okay. Experiments have shown that cartilage destruction was decreased in the presence of these healthful omega-3 fats. This is because these fats are taken up by the cells and are incorporated in the cell membrane. Cell membranes have a high content of fat in their structure, and when this fat is the right type, they will function well. Please see Chapter 6 for an in-depth discussion of good and bad fats. The incorporation of omega-3s in cartilage cell membranes makes these cells healthier and sends cells to their DNA to decrease the production of inflammatory substances and cartilage-degrading enzymes. These studies highlight the powerful effects of nutrients such as omega-3s in altering gene expression and leading to healthier cartilage cells. Nice. Yeah. Conductivity. Okay. Other studies have shown that omega-3 fatty acids, such as EPAs, found in salmon and cold-water fish, are able to increase the collagen synthesis of cartilage cells. Wow. The conclusion of the many studies of the effects of omega-3 fats on cartilage is that diets supplemented with omega-3 fats have cartilage protective and anti-inflammatory effects and are thus beneficial in the treatment of osteoarthritis. Omega-3 fats are thus important nutraceuticals. Nutraceuticals are nutritional substances with beneficial effects in treating and preventing disease. As an example of the importance of omega-3 fats, certain people with a single nucleotide polymorphism in a gene that produces the enzyme arachidonate 5-lipoxygenase have been shown by researchers to have increased inflammation in their bodies when eating a diet low in omega-3s. Okay. Because we do not have the ability to genetically test every individual for this particular SNP, it is recommended that everyone should strive to increase the amount of omega-3 fats in their diets. Omega-3 fatty acids can help decrease the inflammatory symptoms of osteoarthritis. Omega-3 dietary treatment of degenerative joint disease works by decreasing the production of harmful substances, inflammatory prostaglandins and MMPs, by directly blocking the genes that code for these substances and decreasing the overall inflammation in the body. Omega-3 fats are good for bone. The effects of omega-3s on bone have been studied. As discussed earlier, a joint is made up of the ends of two adjoining bones that are covered by a wet cap of cartilage cushion. The joint moves as these cartilage-covered subchondral bones glide past each other. Scientific studies have shown that omega-3s exert positive effects on bone. They have beneficial effects in decreasing the risk of the development of osteoporosis or weakening of bone. Animal studies have shown that omega-3 fats increase the strength of bones, especially in estrogen-deficient postmenopausal animals. Omega-3s fight inflammation. One of the major causes of increased inflammation is the consumption of unhealthy trans fats and excessive consumption of saturated fats found in red meats. Trans fats should be completely or nearly completely eliminated from the diet. In the case of saturated fats, they should be consumed significantly less than omega-3 fats. Yes. He would recommend eating, not me, chicken and salmon over red meat for the vast majority of meals in which animal protein is consumed. I would just say no meat. But when we increase the amount of omega-3s we eat, we reduce the fire of inflammation in our body. An important study group of 727 female nurses showed that an intake of omega-3s lowered blood levels of inflammatory biomarkers such as ESR, don't remember what that is, in these women. Other studies have shown that also regular intake of omega-3s lower inflammation in the body and improves overall health. Even significantly overweight people who also have metabolic syndrome, when given a diet rich in omega-3 fats, showed a decrease in their overall inflammation and lessening of their metabolic syndrome state. Diets rich in omega-3s help the body incorporate these healthful fats into the cell membranes rather than the inflammatory arachidonic acid fat. Omega-3s stimulate PPAR receptors and decrease inflammation. Recent research has shown that omega-3s are absorbed into the bloodstream and interact with specific cellular receptors called PPAR alpha receptors. Receptors are unique three-dimensional chemical compounds on the cell membrane that interact with other chemicals and transmit the chemical signal to the nucleus of the cell. In the nucleus, the signal is interpreted by stimulating specific genes in the DNA template, which then become activated. When these PPAR alpha receptors are activated by a diet rich in omega-3s, genes that help lower the inflammatory response of the body are activated. Omega-3s reduce production of inflammatory substances by the arachidonic acid pathway. Similar to the action of commonly used anti-inflammatory drugs such as Motrin and naproxen. Whoa. Omega-3 fats such as EPA and DHA found in fish oils affect important chemical steps in the arachidonic acid pathway. They lower the production of inflammatory compounds by shutting down the pathways that produce unhealthful prostaglandins such as the LOX pathway. Conclusions. Omega-3 fats have many beneficial effects in decreasing inflammation in our joints. They decrease the production of cartilage-degrading enzymes that are overproduced in osteoarthritis. Omega-3 fats also turn off cartilage cell genes that code for inflammatory products. Omega-3s inhibit the formation of toxic AGEs in the bloodstream by clearing sugar from the blood and storing it as glycogen for later use. Omega-3s positively affect cartilage by helping maintain the proper three-dimensional structure of healthy cartilage. Because of all these benefits, omega-3s are beneficial nutraceuticals in the treatment of osteoarthritis. Figure 9.1. Beneficial effects of the omega-3 fats. They decrease clotting in the blood and make the blood thinner. This has benefits in decreasing the formation of blood clot strokes and heart attacks. They decrease blood triglyceride level. They decrease blood pressure. They cause increase in the good blood lipid HDL. They fight inflammation by lowering the production of inflammatory substances in the body. They improve mitochondrial function. They decrease enlargement of fat cells around our waists. Oh, cool. They activate genes that help burn fat and lower the body's ability to form fat. They decrease the storage of triglycerides in cells and thus help fight obesity. When they are incorporated in the cell membrane in large numbers, they regulate the uptake of blood sugar and thus lower the amount of sugar in the bloodstream. Wow. They turn off inflammatory genes and turn on the genes that fight inflammation in the body. Decreasing blood pressure? Wow. Oh, boy. Okay, 107. This is really good stuff. I'm going to take a break. Unhealthy diets cause hormonal imbalance. Okay, and this is then we're going to, so then chapter 11 is sweet toxins that destroy our joints, how AGEs lead to osteoarthritis, and those are the glycation endpoints, which means sugar-crusted proteins. Why it is not a good idea to treat osteoarthritis with drugs, and that's chapter 12. Nutrients beneficial to our joints, genetic research, beneficial nutrients for the joints. This is going through vitamins and why. Going into SAMe, interested in that. B-complex vitamins, vitamin C, a nutraceutical arsenal needed to combat osteoarthritis, glucosamine, chondroitin, dietary recommendations in osteoarthritis for the new millennium. Aww, this is so sweet. Our healthcare system is in crisis. That was great. And he's growth, yeah. Ethics and genetic. He was even kind of giving me the angle of like, why waste all this taxpayer money while I waste doing all these like really extreme measures with surgeries? Why not treat it naturally? I like this guy, and he might have moved to Astoria. I found a Peter Bales here, and I'm wondering if he's Nicole Bales' dad because I remember hearing that, but I don't know. Maybe it's just a different Peter Bales. I don't know. There's a lot of them. But this guy is great. And it says Peter Bales, MD, MHSA, is an orthopedic surgeon in private practice, member of the clinical staff at the UC Davis Medical Center Department of Orthopedics, a fellow of the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, and a member of the and research advocate of the Arthritis Foundation. Woo! I love him.